And then, what often, I don't want to say this is jarring, but, oftentimes you're going to be asked for information, whether it's 7A, 504, or any SBA related program. There's affiliation requirements. So if you have a bunch of businesses that you own, whether they be similar in nature or there's a controlling interest that is comparable across several different businesses, those businesses, the net worth, net profit of those businesses needs to be consolidated in order to factor into the size standards. That slide that Ron brought up earlier, the 5 million net, 15 million net worth. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that, we're not asking for this information out of, our health. We're asking for it because it's a requirement to determine whether or not you are indeed a small business, or the conglomerate, if you will, is a small business. And so, a basic comparison, of 504, 7A, conventional. Conventional obviously has various uses. 504 is predominantly used for fixed assets. And as Ron alluded to, 7A is multi-purpose. Down payments on the 7A 504 side are going to be as little as 10%. You start doing conventional financing, which we can't necessarily do because that's a higher tier of credit. You're looking at, anywhere between, I've seen some come in at 15, but 20 to 30% down. You can get a variable or fixed rate on a conventional, typically variable on the 7A. We're fixed rate. So once it's set, it's fixed for the life of the loan. Conventional project property, let's use real estate as an example. Predominantly, the project property is going to be the sole collateral taken. Same with 504. On the 7A side of things, it's take all available collateral that's available. And so typically the collateral requirement on a 7A, even if it's used for commercial real estate, is going to be a bit more arduous. But that may suit purposes if you look to flip the property at some point. Fees determined by lender on a conventional side, lowest fees allowable by SBA on the 504 side, and then fees on the 7A side are predicated on the size of the loan. And so, I mentioned this earlier, that there's two buckets. So there's the regular 504 that includes expansion. And I understand that gets somewhat convoluted. But so if it's an expansion, the project involves expansion, any amount of the existing indebtedness that does not exceed 100% of the cost of the expansion may be refinanced. Expansion includes any project that involves acquisition, construction, improvement of land, building, equipment for use by the applicant. Now, conversely, the 504 without expansion debt refinance is a relatively new program. And substantial changes were implemented vis-a-vis the Economic Aid Act that was passed, I believe, in December of 2000. I believe that's the case. We got regs some 6 months later. Anyway, it's SBA refinance a project of qualified debt. So qualified debt basically means that the original purpose of the loan that you got, it may not necessarily be SBA, was for a purpose that is comparable to that of what 504 regularly does. So if it's owner-occupied real estate, however, there are eligibility loan-to-value limitations. These projects can cover eligible business expenses incurred prior to the project. So the rule of thumb is 85% of the original indebtedness needs to line up with SBA eligible use of proceeds on the 504 side, and then you can include other eligible business expenses. Now, part of the problem is eligible business expenses could be incurred but not paid, or could be paid out within 18 months of the application being approved by SBA. So it's a fairly narrowly defined other eligible business expenses that can be included. But we wanted to include this slide nonetheless. A lot of it born out of the fact that we may be focusing on the bucket that's not being utilized because the bucket that is being utilized has run out. And so we wanted to make mention of that as well. And again, a better picture of me, a dated picture of me, my contact information. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Ron.
Thanks, Matt. You bring up some interesting points, and I think we probably could do a whole seminar on debt refinancing itself. So it's a tough subject to really handle in a short few minutes, but I think you did a really good job in getting that introduced to our audience. And with that, I want to introduce Harrison, if I can grab my screen, get it in the right spot here. Harrison, are you available?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. So Harrison, again, with the United Business Bank. Take it from here, Harrison.
Okay.
And let me mention one thing before you start, Harrison. I'll mention one thing before you start. I know we're running a little bit time, squeezed in terms of time. We're going to extend it enough time so we have that 15 minutes for Q&A if there's questions out there. And if there's not, maybe the few questions that we have, we'll definitely take advantage in answering those. So with that, Harrison, sorry about the interruption, but go right ahead.
No problem. All right, so I think you guys don't see the slides yet, but let me just do a quick introduction.
Okay.
So what you're seeing now is our webpage, the United Business Bank webpage. As you can see, you'll see United Business Bank, Pacific Enterprise Bank, because we recently acquired Pacific Enterprise Bank just earlier this month. And so they are located in Irvine, which now expands our reach down to Irvine. So we have an office there just next to the Santa Ana Airport. And then in the Southern California area, we have the Garden Grove branch where Michelle and Noctin, who were on the video earlier, are. And then we have a branch in Buena Park, as well as Long Beach. And I am personally located in the LA office in Koreatown. And so those are our Southern California locations. Just to do a quick introduction of United Business Bank, we, as mentioned earlier, we do SBA 7A loans, SBA 504 loans as a third-party lender. We also participate in the USDA BNI program, as well as the California State Guarantee Program. So I don't want to get too much into non-SBA products, but I just kind of wanted to mention the California State Guarantee Program because that's a program we use quite often when we have situations where if a business doesn't qualify for SBA, not due to credit reasons, but really due to some eligibility reasons. Those are the times that we then try to get those loans done through the California State Guarantee Program, which is a little bit different from the SBA. It's run by the state of California, but it's kind of similar to the SBA in the sense that it allows us as a lender, as a bank, to be able to provide guarantee financing, meaning we can be more aggressive because the state of California is guaranteeing our loans, right? Similar concept to that of SBA. So if you're curious, you guys can definitely reach out to me. I can share more information as to how that works. But before I go too much off of topic, I will kind of get back to talking about the 7A loans, right? So, and just one thing to note, I do manage all of those programs that I just mentioned. So if you guys have anything you want to talk about as it relates to SBA, 7A, 504, USDA, or the California State Guarantee, I'm the person to reach here at United Business Bank, okay? Okay, so moving on. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, I couldn't share my screen because, we had some technical difficulties that kind of comes with working for a bank, secure systems and this and that. But so what I wanted to kind of briefly talk about today is really having to do with SBA loan documentation requirements, right? So one of the things that I hear from a lot of my customers or a lot of customers who are interested in SBA financing is one of the things that people mention is that the SBA requires a lot of documentation. It also takes a lot longer generally compared to a conventional loan. And so these are some of the comments that we hear all the time, right? Documentation is too much, or it just takes too long to process. Now, I won't deny that the documentation is more thorough with the SBA, but that comes with the territory, right? So SBA has a set of guidelines that every lender must follow. And so the documentation that we have to collect and verify and such are definitely more extensive, generally speaking, than a conventional loan that you would get from a bank with no guarantee attached. So that is the truth. But knowing what documentation is required to obtain a loan and kind of preparing those documents ahead of time for the bank it really does help to significantly cut down on the time that it takes to process the loan. So generally speaking, how long does the loan take to process? Shortest time we've done ever would, I don't know, maybe be about a week, where we literally had every single document we needed on the first day, and then the underwriter was able to work on it and finish it out in getting the underwriting done in a few days, and then going through the approval process and then funding the loan, right? But generally speaking, you're looking at about 4 weeks of processing. Real estate transactions, you're looking at a minimum of 6 weeks, primarily because the appraisal will take about 4 weeks, and for us, there's a review process that takes about a week. So if you have a real estate transaction, the appraisal alone will take 5 weeks. And sometimes these days, because of the volume of appraisals, we've been actually noticing that the appraisals have been taking a little bit longer or are a little bit more expensive. And that's the same with environmental reports that are required for real estate transactions as well. So just in terms of timing, business transactions average of around 4 weeks, and real estate transactions, you're looking at about 6 weeks or longer, right? So when I say 4 to 6 weeks, though, or if I'm not talking about the appraisal and I'm just talking about the time to process the request, the majority of the time really does go into collection of the required documentation. So that of the 4 weeks, the time that the processor, the underwriter takes to actually underwrite that deal is probably, a few days to a week at most. It really is everything in between of trying to collect and make sure we have all of the documentation and reviewing what was received, and then finding out that we don't have everything, and so we send another pending list and we get more documents, but it's still not complete, and the back and forth, right? And so a lot of the time in that processing period is really attributed to the collection of documents.